Last year we put in our biggest willow wall, and at the time, same as all these things, I just throw masses of willow at it. What survives, survives, what doesn't, doesn't. And then when we get more willow, which is usually gifted to us, we throw that at it, and we just keep going until enough of it is stuck and enough of it is growing that we're able to achieve what we want. And quite a bit of it has done quite well. The other end, not so much. We'll talk about that when we get there. But we're finishing this off today. We're finishing the whole run. So I thought at the same time, I'd show you how far we've come along. So these are some of the biggest cuttings that were shoved in last year. So as people come up through the field, you know, behind the camera, this is going to be the first archway, right? So these will be fairly small. There'll be a nice high status tree behind. And then, so just in terms of the context, all the tree rows that you see, you can actually see the guards there. That's a triple row of hazel, alder, hazel. So that will fill in and that will create a really dense screen right across there. Just to that side of camera is we've got a raspberry system. We had terrible failure with raspberries. The first year they went up, we had a drought. This is the driest point of the site, and we lost nearly all of them. So we've been very kindly gifted some. So they've gone in, and we'll see if they do better. A lot of it comes down to what sort of year we have. So these did quite well because they went in early in the year, and this was a variant, a cultivar that we got that someone gave us locally. Did really well. What I've done at the front here is I've thrown in just a few that are this red variety, so that when we twist this whole, because all these are cuttings that will be twisted into a big arch with, so as you come up and around, you'll have a nice high status tree there with, you know, beautiful fruit tree. So that will be the view framed by this, and then this will be just a great big huge intermingled mixed up woven willow sculpture. Nothing particularly geometric, nothing regular, just, you know, all woven together. So we've got a wall of that down to here, and we've got another archway here. Now so far you can see they've done really well. We've always had some failures, but you can see most of them have done quite well considering they've had grass competition, they've had vole pressure, all the rest of it. There's no guards on any of these. These are just something we do with surplus willow because we might as well do something with it. And it's nice to have something sculptural. I really like sculptural willow. So this is the next arch. Again, it's done quite well. You can see we've mostly gone for very big cuttings in these sections, just so we've got, so as the rest of it comes up, I want the archways done as soon as possible. So I tend to go for the bigger cuttings because they have a better strike rate. So again, they took quite well. But when we hit this section, we start to have a few more losses. There is a lot of living material in here. See, that's a living one. But there's also quite a bit of failed. So at this point, we're getting a little bit later in the year when they went in, or perhaps the cultivar wasn't quite as good. Although here we have a good run. Yeah, there's a little run here of them that have all taken, but we did have a drought last year. It wasn't the worst drought we've had since we came here, but it wasn't a great one either. So up here at the driest point of the site, we did lose quite a bit of willow. But we've got another archway here, and again, they mostly survived. We did have some losses in this one actually, but the bigger cuttings tended to survive. I'm not sure about that one. That might actually have failed. But you can see lots of these did take. So from this point on, the strike rate wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't terrible either. So actually these didn't do too bad. There's another run here. You can see there's quite a bit of green wood still, but we hit a certain point, which is roughly here, I think. And beyond that, almost complete failure. So again, all this needs reinforcing. All of this needs replacing. This archway did quite well. You can see again some of the bigger wood. Some of them took quite well. But beyond that, again, some of them took, but maybe a 50-50, which actually isn't bad. We lose some of them again yet. And then this old dead stick on the end here is just to mark the end of it, so when the grass is up I can see without driving over them. Now the theory was, because this carries on again over, where are we? Here, the idea was to leave this open so I can reverse the van round and all the rest of it. I didn't bring the van up here once and reverse it onto this. It wasn't dry enough at first part of the year, and then later on it was too dry. It just, yeah, so it ended up not happening. So I'm just going to fill this in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from this archway here. You can see, again, double row of willow here. That will cause a nice archway. We've got alder and Elaeagnus behind us, so that'll be a really good screen from there. So there'll be a little, you know, tunnel coming in from here, so there won't even be, you know, direct view. So, you know, be pretty wind protection. but we're going to fill in from this section here all the way across to as far as we went previously, but you can see, I mean, yeah, a lot of it's dead. And then we're going to keep reinforcing it all the way along until we run out of material. Now, in terms of material, this isn't any named cultivar, this isn't anything fancy. This is just material that's been cleared for underneath the electrical cabling. It was either going to be disposed of or we could take it, so I went and got it, and we just threw it into a pond for about, I don't know, 2 months, just to keep it moist. And today we're going to break it down and we're going to put it in. Now, in terms of cuttings, we're not playing around. So, for example, that, I might trim that off there, and then we'll just hammer that in as a cutting. You know, we're not messing about. We've got really good, solid material. It lay around for quite a while after it had been cut because we weren't able to go and fetch it straight away. So it has had a bit of a hard life, but because it's had a lot of time soaking in water, most of it is actually starting to come out in bud. So it should have a good rate. But yeah, that's a pretty good example actually. So I'm going to get that. In fact, let's use this one. So you can see that's not a bad cutting. So literally all I'm going to do with it is I'm just going to roughly put a point on it. And that'll do. And whoop, it's going to go to the row, and for the sake of argument, it's going to stick that in. And actually, I'm going to give that a little tap because that will go in deeper. But you can see that would probably take as is. But whoop, and that'll do. So that's probably the smallest cutting I'm going to use. I'm going to go for as big as possible. So I'm just going to throw all of that in, and then we'll come back at the end and show just what it looks like. So that took right up till dusk on the day that we did it, and yeah, I wasn't able to do any filming then, but it's a few days later and it's all in. So I'm going to just get it all in. The bigger stuff has all just gone into the ground, the second row behind it all, and that second row extends pretty much right along the whole top here. These have got a lot of energy in them, so you know these will do really well. But you can see just how closely, densely planted it is. Some of these cuttings, you know, I mean they're 2.5 foot long, significant amount of wood. So you know it stands a good chance of striking, and we've done that all the way along, reinforced with a few bits that were there and had taken, all the way up as far as here, which is going to be the first archway. Which is why we're still making this video today. We're actually going to reinforce the archways today, because otherwise, you know, these bits are a bit further along and that'll start to irritate me. Most of the archways have taken, but I'd rather have something a bit more substantial in here to give them, you know, half a chance. And the material we're going to be using today, I'm pretty sure is the same stuff that we got to take well as the archways right on the other food forest. And some of them are in the point of being tied in this year. So it's like a 3-4 year process to get them ready, but if we don't do it, it's never going to be ready. So again, this is all new plantings. And you can see all the significant wood, you know, like this, all just went in. The stuff that was previous is like, you know, this type of stuff. It's got a very high failure rate. Some of it will take from the root still, but not a huge amount. And that's the thing, we just chuck loads of willow at it and what takes. So you can see just how much has gone in. This is mostly new material, right as far as here, which we're into the next archway. And here, we've put in some significant timbers. I mean, you can see that is, you know, that's huge. I mean, it's not because I like to dig a hole, put it in, and then backfill. You know, just hammering it into the ground doesn't really work when you get up to something this big because they're not straight. So you're trying to hammer it in and it doesn't work. So we just dig a hole, we put it in, and we just, you know, keep it, give it a nice bit of distance for a couple of years while it roots itself. And they do really well. We've had quite a few with, you know, the really big stakes that we put in previously. They're nice little bushes now, you know, it's a nice way to do it. So another archway, and again, still mostly new material. This inner row here, we're still coming through with, you know, pretty significant chunks of wood. That's all new, all the way along. And at this point, really, this is where we stopped. And you can see that the stuff we've been putting in here is the thinner, whippier stuff at the ends. And it's not as dense at this end, because this end had a better take rate anyway. It's just you can't really tell this time of year because it's all dormant still. And then we're into this biggest archway, which you can see, you know, it's a good take, again, because these were big ones, you know, they did really well. So the ones further down, like you can see the same thing here. So the ones further down, you know, they'll take, we'll have a really good success rate. And as both rows come through and grow out together, I think splicing those into the same woven willow wall along here, because this is the inner skin of the shelter belt. You know, the wind's really been significantly slow by the time it hits here. In, you know, 5 to 10 years, this is going to take a while. The trees in between here will actually be productive apple varieties and a couple of other bits and bobs. So, you know, there'll actually be some food production up here. This will be, you know, partially decorative, but also a huge amount of shelter, because, you know, that's a lot of biomass once it's grown out. So beyond here, it's pretty much as was, but you can see even here, this is basically, you know, what we were looking at in terms of, you know, really big stakes. So, you know, this is 1 year in, I think. So you can see, you know, all of those big stakes that we've already put in this year will hopefully all turn into something like this that'll give us, you know, a really good starting point. So beyond that, it's just time. But what I do want to do is reinforce the archways. You can see it's a bit weak here. There's not a huge amount that's taken. So luckily we got some really good stuff that we need to make use of anyway. So this willow is, I think, the same type as we've had go into the existing willow arches a couple of years ago. I think these were the excess cuttings, I think. And that's the thing, these are like, you know, wild feral varieties that people have given us when they've had to trim and all the rest of it. It's not a known cultivar, which is why we're using it in these big structures all in together. It doesn't matter, you know, it's not going to be sold as a commodity for cuttings, other than unless someone wants to put, I don't know, say 1,000 in just as shelter belt, maybe. But it's on the basis that we don't know what they are. They're just local variants that are doing well here, so, you know, we're working with them in this instance. But these are hitting the point that really need a little bit of management, because, you know, they need to be manageable with hand tools. So we're going to do a bit of thinning on it, and it's surprising how much material it'll come up with. And then we're going to do like a pollard on it, and reduce the number of stems lower down, just to make it far easier to manage going forward, so that eventually we'll have the, you know, the majority of the stool will be, you know, a great big, you know, nub at about chest height. That's very easy to manage for people with, you know, hand loppers and so on. So this is, you know, it's going to produce a lot of shoots lower down as well, but they'll be more easily managed. We'll get, you know, as much growth as we can higher up where it's easy to cope with. So we'll just see, that's the priority today, is create the right shape for the willow itself, but we'll create, you know, quite a bit of material, and that's what we're going to do with that. I'm not going to do a video on just taking things off the tree, but we'll show a bit when it's done. That's all that down. So you can see I've taken it off at about chest height. We'll put another load of the really small stuff in as cuttings just to reinforce this, because it didn't go all the way along previously. And we've seen in a few places where the wind's hammered it and it's, you know, taken it virtually flat. So by reducing the load higher up, it's less of a flag while the roots get more established. It's a fairly wet spot, it's directly below the barn, so we take all the water off that, but it's not actually our barn. So we've got a whole swale system to direct it elsewhere so it doesn't cause any issues further down the site. It becomes an asset. But this bit here is still wet, which, you know, is really useful in its own way. You know, I think these are probably the most drought resistant plants we've got eventually, because anytime there's a major rain event, they get the first drink, you know, so they should do well. So this is what we've generated. That's quite a bit of biomass, considering we're just giving them a bit of a haircut really, and they're not really established yet. So we're going to take the longest ones that we can, and we're going to make the longest cuttings that we can from them, and we're going to start inserting them into the archways at the top of the field. So something thinner like that, I can just go straight in with to a reasonable depth. But not too deep. When it's really wet, I can get down 18 inches. It's brilliant. Can't really do that with this. And this one is no different. And this is a really big flag. You can see it's quite windy today. This is nothing. So with something like this, if I'd been able to go down, you know, 2 foot, brilliant, I'd leave this at full height. But it's just too much of a flag in the wind. So I'm going to take these little side branches off to reduce that. I don't know, I might risk it with these two. We'll see, maybe. If it gets really wet anytime in the next week, I can come up and just give all of them another shove, see if I can get another few inches in. But, don't know, we'll give it a try, I think. But it has to be balanced. The more of it I can get into the ground, the more of an anchor it's got against the wind. but I want to be able to get these archways up quickly, so it's a difficult balancing act. So this I'm just going to leave as a single stem, so there's minimal drag. You can see that's not going to pick up a huge amount of wind, and of course it gives me a lot of chop and drop that'll just feed the trees. So we're going to go along and we're going to do this to all the archways all the way along. We've got plenty of material. I'll probably have some left over. It's easy to fixate on having to put every single scrap in. I'm not today. I just need to get these archways done, and then we'll see how much is left, and then I'll make a decision on it. But really, I think with the archways done, I'll probably call that good. It looks like we're about to lose the weather. It's really blowing up, but you get the idea. So we're getting, these aren't in as deep as I'd like. It is true. I'm going to come through just with secateurs. I'm going to take off, you know, the thinner stuff on some of these bigger things just to reduce the flagging a little. And you know what? We might lose quite a bit of it, but so what? You know, it cost us nothing except a couple of hours of labour. It's doing things like that that we've got away with doing as much as we have without spending a huge amount. So yeah, it'll be. I think most of it will take. You know, Willow's pretty resilient. It's still pretty early in the year, and it's literally fresh. It's just been cut. But up here, as I say, it's one of those projects that we just keep throwing Willow at until it takes. But you can see already, I mean, assuming this one actually copes, and it should, this one's not too bad. You know, it's not, you know, a huge amount, maybe 2 years, and we should have a decent, nice little archway in here. And as the other stuff comes up, they'll be able to get integrated as well. And the sides, and, you know, the whole thing will start to take on, you know, real bit of dimension, and, you know, start to be a real feature in the landscape. So these are actually slightly bigger than the others. They're more like this on the other archways. They're not going to walk all the way along. You've got the idea. So yeah, that's a lot of Willow. Now at this point we've got a lot of cutting material left over that's small stuff. What I'll probably do is I'll just throw some of that into the ground just to reinforce this section here that hasn't had some new material this year. It's mostly taken from what I recall, so I don't want to put too much in there, but I'll throw a bit in there just until I get bored, really, or I start losing the weather. But yeah, that is going to be a pretty significant Willow feature in the landscape. We've got one or two that are almost ready for, you know, reaching the point that they're getting their training and so on now from previous stuff. But you know, this one's still the youngest thing that we've put in. But yeah, looking forward to seeing this one. It's going to be really interesting. So yeah, that's another load of free Willow into the ground.